Isn't this super cool here? I hope you can see in the background, or I actually swing the camera around. Normally where I'm sitting here, there's actually water, so that's why you can see the roots of the trees everywhere. And if I swing it around, you can see the water over there. I don't know, it's just something really special. I just love it. I just love seeing and how nature adapts to change, how these trees can still flourish here. Well, you know, some time of the year they are kind of underwater, and sometimes they're not, and somehow I can emotionally relate, right? When you have PTSD, when you're going through periods of that deep depression, deep despair, right? Where it feels like you're battling so hard in the water, but you can't keep the head underwater. It feels like you can't keep the head above water, right? So coming here and seeing how nature adapts to those things. Nature has experiences of being flooded in a way as I have emotionally, right? Obviously it's kind of different, but those periods of deep sadness, right, they come and they go. People often ask me, will it ever stop? Will it ever not have or go back to being depressed? And it's an interesting question, because sometimes it feels like I was born being depressed, like depression was a big thing through my childhood, having thoughts of wanting to die when I was probably about 6 years old, right? Where it was very little when I was already that deeply depressed, and obviously my teenage years were a struggle, and suicide attempts and things like that. So depression was a frequent visitor, and there was this constant tone of sadness, or that depression. It never really lifted, right? But then there was periods where it was really, really bad, where it didn't feel like I am feeling depressed, like my doctor said. I had to correct them. No, I am depression, right? It was so intense that it felt like I became one with depression. That's all I was. That was all there was to me, and is to me, is depression. There's nothing else. And perhaps you can relate to this feeling, right? It's a very empty and yet so heavy. It's so heavy that you can't even roll out of bed. It feels like your legs are too heavy to move, and there was a sense of pointlessness, right? So I had many periods of that in my life. Sometimes I didn't know where they were coming from or what triggered them, and other times it was when I had some real physical illnesses, struggles, like with my Meniere's disease and things like that. So where that kind of triggered another episode of feeling really depressed, and what's the point of it all, right? So perhaps for you it's too, like there's waves of real intensity coming, and then it eases off again, and it goes in the background, but it's still staying in the background. I think for me, so that is my experience with this, right? So in the more recent years, there was real periods where there was just pure joy as well. I did not have that sense of depression in the background anymore. There was a lightness, there was happiness, there was content, some peacefulness with it as well, right? There was that. I had big periods of that. And then lately, I think shifting a little bit, right? That's so I wouldn't call this depression as it used to be, but there are waves of intense sadness, where I actually cry. Right, I have like tears just running down, just all of a sudden. There's no real reason, and I just have sadness. But it has a very different quality to the depression I was in when I was feeling suicidal. In those periods, I often could not produce a single tear. Even in therapy sessions, crying was not something I was able to do very often. Even though those brief moments of when it felt like a release, it felt good, and I know my body would have needed it, but at that point I was not able to do that. So now I have those periods, and as I said, it's still sadness, but it has such a different quality to it. It's almost like that there's some pureness. It's just pure sadness. There is no story attached with it, if that makes sense. Because when I was depressed, there was always a story about how useless I am, how I'm a burden, how the world would be better off without me, and those kind of really dark stories, right? They're the real cripple, real pull down. Well, now when sadness arises, it's so pure. It's just what it is, and there's no resistance then. Or perhaps this is why there's no resistance for me to cry. And sometimes it's actually tears, and there's sadness and joy at the same time, because it just feels so beautiful to be able to just express pure emotions and just allow them to be for what they are, just what is. Just how it is. Allow those tears to flow.